Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am currently preparing to upgrade my many-to-many decentralized decentralizing train system to version 7. If you are not familiar with what this train system does, it's basically a whole bunch of combinator controlled systems stuck together where I have a depot with building trains that I can remotely control. So I can tell them what items to load, I can tell it how many trains to send. I also have a resource management system as part of it where the stations essentially take care of controlling how many trains go where based on the needs. It's all very dynamic, it's all very useful. It solves a ton of problems that vanilla leaves us with, so limitations and such. But the ways in which I have to do so sadly are fairly UPS or FPS inefficient, so it might slow down your computer if you have an older machine. And Factorio 1.1 has come out with a new feature on the train stations, which is that we can actually limit the amounts of trains that can go to a station. So every station now has slots, and you can tell the station how many trains it should allow. And trains will not attempt to pass to a station that is already fully reserved. This is new. This is something that previously we had only available through mods, so I couldn't make use of that until now. But now that the feature is in, I'm going to upgrade my entire resource system, and this should allow me to be much more efficient and also allow me to delete several functions that I had to build into my system, which made it a little bit bigger than you'd normally expect. It was a lot of fun creating these, but they are kind of resource intensive. But first I gotta figure out how does this actually work in game, this train limit stuff. How exactly do the trains behave? What do I need to know? So for that I've turned on the debug mode. If I had F4, I can change the settings for the debug mode. The green lines are the indicator of where the train wants to go to. Right? If I mouse over the train, you can see the path it takes, and that's also where the arrow points, the green line points me. What I've done here is, if I put these to one train per station. Oh, did I not? Maybe I just need to turn this on and off. There you go. Yeah. So if you're wondering what I did here, I just turned this combinator on and off with a mod. The mod is called push button, and it basically allows me to just turn combinators. If you look on the right side, it just allows me to turn combinators on and off at range. And this one is set up so that it turns all the stations here on or off at the same time. You can see they turn on and off. Okay, it's disabled. Let's turn it on. Okay, so we can see here every station is set up to allow only one train. Therefore, my 5 trains will split themselves up amongst all 5 stations. And it appears that they prioritize always. So if I keep doing this, you can see it's always the same pattern. So it looks as though the trains will still always prioritize the closest station. Right? We can also see that if I turn these off again and I change the settings over here to 2, and I turn the stations on again, we can see they're still prioritizing the closest. So these 2 trains, let's actually remove all the others. These 2 trains are trying to go to the same station because it now has slots for 2 trains, as I just did. And that basically leaves the other 3 trains to search for the next closest open ones. And it appears that the system very much does prefer to match up the closest trains with the closest station. Right? So there's no it doesn't look how it does, at least it seems to me that it doesn't look how to keep the path lengths overall shortest on average. Instead, it simply firstly assigns to the shortest possible path, and then the next shortest possible path, and so on. What I also know is that trains, what's happened here? Are these turned off? What I also know is, let me actually turn debug off. If there are trains that have no slots available of the stations that they want to go to, so these guys want to go to A, but because I have more trains in here than I have stations, so I have currently, let's see, 43 trains in here that want slots in A, but I only have 10 stations with A, and they each only have, oops, no slots available for trains at all. So you can see here, I've set a constant combinator that sends a signal 0, and 0 is set to set the train's limit, and since we're sending a signal of 0, the train limit is 0. So I've currently 0 slots open and 40 or a bunch of trains that want to visit stations A. So the destinations are full. They know that the stations are around because we can see here the stations are turned on, right? But since there are no slots, these guys are complaining that the destination is full. The problem here is that when they are stuck with destination full, they will stop wherever they are, and this might be in the middle of the track somewhere, right? So if I give this a 1, you can see the trains are moving. This might not be long enough over here. No, it's happening here. We can see the trains will move as soon as slots open up, but as soon as all the slots are taken up, the trains just stop moving, right? They just stop wherever they are, which happens in this case to be the stations where they wait, but this could be anywhere on the track, right? It's just essentially coincidence here that it's a station, but it could be anywhere really. So I need to find a way to control the slots I want available. I want the stations to make available for trains, but I also want to make sure that my trains that do not have destinations anymore, or only have full destinations, don't get stuck in the middle of my train network. I figure I'm going to do this with probably centralized stackers. So about half a year ago or 3/4 of a year ago, I tried a new system. I will be adopting the combinator setups I've taken here, changed a little bit to incorporate the new functions and remove unnecessary ones, made unnecessary by the availability of the whole train slot thing. And I tested the centralized train stations here, so train yards here. So the advantage of centralized train stackers or train yards is, of course, that I have one space in which I can access all my trains. So what I can do is I can make sure that every train will always pass through here. And if I want to, say, change the schedule on all of them, I simply set up a system that will not allow the trains to leave here once they come in here. And once the stacker is full, which is then because every train has, or there's a slot for every train, which means that if the slots are all full, I know that all my trains are here and I can access all of them, fix all the schedules, stuff like that. But the downside is, of course, that it's centralized, which means there's probably going to be traffic jams, or I run the risk of traffic jams if I don't handle it carefully. Another option would, of course, be decentralized stackers, which I have in my version 6. That was the idea, that I would be able to run trains directly from loading to unloading stations. And I had stackers like these in every single station. So one stacker, this is one station, this is the outbound stacker for one station. This would be the inbound stacker for the same station. and this is another station for which this is the outbound stacker. The problem with this is, of course, that I don't have access in one place to all my trains unless I set another train yard up. And I figure if I'm already setting up stackers everywhere, it's going to take up a lot of space, a lot of rails. I could just go with a centralized train yard instead and make it dual purpose. The advantage of it would also be that I can basically on one view see, with one glance see how many of my trains are actually in use currently. Do I have a greater demand, which means that are all my trains always active, or am I, which means that I might need more trains and I can expand easily. That would basically be another advantage of a central system, and I think it can work around the traffic jams well enough that they are not really a danger. Another problem is, of course, that if my trains always need to visit a central stacker, that they are taking unnecessary trips, right? They're not just simply moving from a loading station to an unloading station and back again. But if I route them through like the train yard every time, then I'm going to run into trouble. So I might devise a system where I have a signal on a global network that tells me how many trains are needed at any one time. Those trains are dispatched from the central stacker, and those slots in the stacker are turned off. So a stacker, I mean train yard in this case, right? Where all my trains are basically waiting until they're needed. And that would mean that those trains would, in between trips, not return to the train yard, but simply go from the train yard to either the loading or unloading, depending on their cargo, and from there return back to the loading or unloading station and basically keep going in a circle between the stations instead of visiting the train yard in between. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. That sounds like that would be the solution that offers me both short distances, right? I don't have unnecessary trips. It also gives me the centralized train yard where I can both easily keep track of my train use as well as call all the trains of a particular type that are serving a particular route back to the stacker and have them all in one place so I can change the schedules. And it also gives me an idea in one place how my traffic is looking in dense spots, right? It's like a little bit of a system that allows me to easily keep track of traffic conditions because I basically have an artificial bottleneck there. I can tell from there how I need to advance the rest of my network to make sure that regardless of what happens, I'm never going to end up with unnecessary traffic jams. And I do actually like that because then I can start wiring that bottleneck up and I can actually use alarm systems and stuff to forewarn me instead of waiting until something actually happens. So I think that's going to be my system going forward. I do believe I will keep with this form factor. I find that it has served me well because it is fairly big, but it also has a lot of space for trains. And the size of it allows me to use unloading systems that are very high throughput, right? So you can see over here, I've 8 blue belts going into 4 wagons. That's about the fastest that you can load a train if you're not using bots. And if I reduce the width or the height of the station, I risk running into situations where I have to unload slower because I simply can't fit the belts or whatever I want to do, right? It also offers a lot of space for other stuff. Like you might choose to actually put some factory in here, right? And have it served with robots or whatever. That said, it's of course, since I very likely won't be needing the signal tail anymore, it's basically have something like this where you could as well just delete the top section. Whoops. I could as well just delete this entire top section here, as well as the output down here. And you could just have like inbound here and outbound there or something. So this should be a lot easier to modify now because the system itself isn't going to be quite as complex as it used to be. Just make sure this is built properly. There we go. Anything else? So I predict that I will be able to get rid of the signal tail over here, the descent divisor tail, that I'll be able to get rid of the mechanic around the dummy stations. So if you are at this point unfamiliar with what my system did, one of the problems that I used to have was that, where are we? One of the problems that I used to have in vanilla was that trains would, so without the slots, they would all want to go to the same station, and they would take between 5 and 30 seconds to recalculate whether or not there was another station of the same name available and only then move there. This led to a lot of empty stations, even though there were enough trains to fill them. It just slowed down throughput to a very, very noticeable degree. And the way you can fix that is basically by instantly forcing the trains to recalculate where they want to go every time that the station they currently want to go to gets turned off. And that's basically what these dummy stations are for down here, right? So they would say, okay, every time there are enough trains here, like the waiting slots are basically filled up, this would shut down, which would in turn force every train that wanted to come in here to recalculate to the next best station, which might be this one up here or maybe this one down here or whatever, right? And the slots now mean that I likely don't need to have these dummy stations. So I should be able to get rid of the system too. And I should also be able to get rid of a lot of the combinators over here, make it a little bit smoother. But to be exact, this won't be the exact system I use. It'll be more like this. It looks a little bit cleaner here. Looks a little bit cleaner. I made this about maybe 9 months ago now, somewhere between 6 and 9 months. So I need to familiarize myself with this again. There's still some stuff I know, of course, but I don't recall the purpose of everything, but should be easy enough to get back into it. That will be for the next episode, though. I will be starting to build some test benches, figure out how I want my trains to move. And yeah, I need to also know, because this is a very clean setup, I like this much better than what I have over here in my old systems. As you can see, it's kind of messy. Right, it's kind of messy. If you don't know what's here, it's very difficult to find your way. It's much easier if you have clean delineation between functions. So you might not know which of these is which function, but you can tell, like, if you know that this is one function, this is another function, this is yet a third function, and this is another one, this is another one, and so on and so forth. It's easier to find your way into something like this than into the chaos that's, let's say, in here, right? Good luck figuring this out. It took me a lot of time to build this thing, and I know it, but somebody who isn't used to working with combinators is probably going to have a hard time figuring out what does what. So So I want to see if I can keep this clean delineation that I have over here and transfer that into the slightly tighter setup over here. Here. Put it into here, or maybe in here or something. Preferably down here, I think. Might also choose to sink this down one. But I think there, yeah. No, this stays as it is. Okay. Gonna see how I can fit my combinators in here. Another advantage of the setup is basically that it has like a bit of a stacker built in. So in here there's space for three 1-for-1 trains, so 6 cars. I can fit 3 trains of six cars in here easily, and there's a whole bunch of space for more trains up here too, as well as outbound. There's again space for outbound trains in here. So I basically don't need the stackers over here at all anymore. I should be able to save all the space up here with no trouble at all, right? I did consider changing the form factor, and I might actually revisit that idea now. The question is here, so this one, for example, offers no outbound stacker, right? And that by itself might be enough to make me reconsider using this system at all. The advantage is, of course, that I divorced this from the outpost systems, right? So the problem over here, or the reason why it worked so well over here was that, so this is basically the outpost seat, if you're familiar with it. You would build this first of all, you would put in the outpost, the builder train, unload station, stuff like that. And that influx of material that the outpost seat offers you is what you would use to then build out your all the other stations that you needed in this outpost. And this worked in this form factor really well because the stacker for the outpost seat basically disappeared between all the other stackers over here. Right? It just fit in very, very nicely. And my thinking was, if I don't need those stackers anymore, because I have enough stacker built into each station, plus plus the central train yard, then all of this kind of gets to be in the way. So I might redesign this as well. Maybe split this apart and move the outpost seat into the middle of it. That could look good. That is very likely what I'll do. All right, a whole bunch of stuff to change. Okay, I should not need to change any of these. Except because Factorio 1.0 has changed the GUI. So what I did in several places, I think the actual outposts are a better example of this. What I did in many places here, for example, you can see this was address elevator. This needs some work on setting straight now. So yeah, these blueprints will change too, but only in superficial ways. Okay, thank you for watching so far. I'm going to leave it at this for this episode. The next episode will probably be all about I need to figure out what exactly I did here again and figure out which functions I don't need anymore, what I can delete. Maybe it gives me space for more functions, but I haven't thought of any just yet. This was a pretty complete system. It did a lot of things and it did them quite well, just slightly expensive on your CPU. And that's what I'm looking to correct for. I'm also not sure I'm going to stick with this form factor for the central train yard, although this is more compact than straight lines. So I might just actually stick with it. I'm not sure yet. I have to see. Yeah. Okay, thank you for watching.